topic I'd like to discuss with you today is small business capital gains tax concessions, or CGT concessions. They're a very attractive proposition for small business operators. But what are they exactly and how do you access them? The small business CGT concessions are a significant tax concession on the sale of business assets. They are designed to encourage investment into business and to help small business owners save for their retirement. The concessions are the superannuation system for small business owners. Most importantly, they reduce tax, often to zero, and furthermore they enable extra funds to be contributed tax-free into super. In fact, it is possible to contribute an extra $1,355,000 into super under the small business CGT concessions. There are 4 concessions available: the 15-year exemption, the 50% active asset reduction, retirement exemption, and the rollover deferral. Of course, certain conditions must be met to be able to access the concessions. So let's look at the conditions, the fundamental ones. The first condition is that the asset being sold must be an active asset. That is, an asset used in the business of the taxpayer or an associate of the taxpayer. The second condition is that the taxpayer is a small business operator. That means annual turnover of less than $2 million a year or net assets valued at less than $6 million. The text excludes the home, superannuation and personal use assets. Timing is important, and if you miss out by $1, too bad. Each concession works in a different way. The 15-year exemption allows the entire gain to be tax exempt. It's the holy grail of concessions. The business asset must be owned for more than 15 years and the sale of the business asset must be connected with the retirement of the individual, and that individual must be over 55 years of age. Now, if you haven't owned the asset for more than 15 years or you're not retiring, then other concessions may still be available to you. The 50% active asset reduction allows the taxable gain to be reduced by half. So for example, if you make a gain of $800,000 on the sale of an asset, the general 50% CGT discount would reduce the taxable gain to $400,000. But then a further 50% reduction is possible under the small business CGT rules. This would reduce the taxable gain to $200,000. Then there's the retirement exemption, which allows an individual to disregard up to $500,000 of the taxable gain. And this exemption can work in conjunction with the 50% active asset reduction. So if after applying other concessions you are left with a $200,000 gain, as before, then the retirement exemption can then be applied to reduce that gain to zero. It's called the retirement exemption, but you don't need to retire to access the exemption. If you're less than 55 years old, the exempt amount due to the retirement exemption must be contributed to super. The $500,000 limit for the retirement exemption covers the taxpayer's life. So if $200,000 is used, the taxpayer carries forward $300,000 to use against future eligible gains. The last concession is the rollover deferral. The rollover deferral allows the taxpayer to simply not pay tax on the gain, instead giving the taxpayer 2 years to use the gain to buy another active asset. When a new asset is bought, the taxable gain is then deferred until that replacement asset is sold. Interestingly, there is no obligation to actually buy an asset. So if after 2 years the asset hasn't been acquired, then the taxable amount can either be dealt with by applying the retirement exemption or the tax is simply paid at that point. This is effectively a readily available deferral for 2 years on the taxable gain, and that 2-year deferral can be very useful. It might enable a capital loss to be utilised which was otherwise unavailable, or it might mean the taxpayer is no longer less than 55 years old and therefore no longer obliged to pay the exempt gain into super under the retirement exemption. The key lesson here is that it's all about understanding where you stand in relation to the small business CGT concessions and understanding in a timely manner. For example, if you know you're about to exceed the $6 million net asset value limit, you could make a contribution into super or take some other action to bring you under the limit. But if you've just signed a sale contract, then it's too late to take any action that might improve your eligibility to access the small business concessions. Even if you aren't interested in selling, If you are eligible, these concessions can enable you to restructure your affairs without paying tax. So those are the basic rules around the small business CGT concessions. If you're not sure where you stand in relation to the small business CGT concessions, come and have a chat with me or one of my fellow directors here at CFMC.
We've drawn up a sticky note containing the essential details, which you can access from our website at www.cfmc.com.au. Just click on the publications link on our homepage or call us for an obligation-free consultation. We'd be happy to help you with any questions you might have.